Welcome to Tesse Talks with your host, Tesse Akpeki, and co-host me, Paula Okone. Today is a special edition because, at some times in our life, we reach certain milestones and we love to look back to see where we are some days later or some years later in this case. And this special edition is one in which we are going to be talking about Tesse's older brother, Tony Akpeki, who passed away tragically in December of 2020. It's been 3 years since that happened. Well, actually 2.5 years. And Tesse today wanted to talk a bit more about where she's been, or how she's been, I should say, since the tragedy. As Christians, we sometimes use, as I know she is, as I am, we like to sometimes look back to see where God, or how God has carried us through these difficult, difficult moments. And this is the edition for that. So welcome to Tesse Talks, Tesse, and the floor's yours.
Hi, Paula. I call you my favorite co-host. And always a joy to be with you, particularly as we are at different parts of the Atlantic
Mm-hmm.
across the pond, as they say. And I would love to take this opportunity to share how things have developed since Tony's tragic death, as you said. I really went south, so to speak, in myself, very unhappy, um, quite depressed, a lot of emotions around anger and loss and grief. And the worst part was actually fighting a court battle. It really takes a lot out of you. And I came to our listeners and shared a lot of those emotions at the time. And our listeners were absolutely brilliant. A lot of people listening in left messages. Some actually sent me cards. And it's really interesting how you get a sense of being held at a time that is really dark, and somehow you don't even know how you're going to get through, you know. And many times I didn't have a sense that I would actually get through to the next day. And I'm here with you today, which means that I did get through. We did get through. And, for us, we were touched when the person who killed my brother, it was a hit and run incident in Dover, where she got a sentence for what she did. Now, it will never bring Tony back, and he's gone. But at least to see that she won't be killing anybody anytime soon means that there's one less dangerous driver on the road. But our family had been left without a vibrant, happy, charming, handsome man, and I'm not biased.
You froze.
That freeze.
Yes. So you were saying that your family has been left without a caring brother, husband, handsome, charming young man, and you're not biased.
No, not biased, no.
And he was indeed all of those
Yeah, definitely. And more,
and more.
yeah, for sure.
And so, uh, under other circumstances other than a loss, I would say what has been the highlights within the last 3 years, but I don't think the word highlight is appropriate at this time. So what I'll ask instead is, so what got you through?
The first thing that you mentioned was my faith. You know, I have a faith, and I know you do too, and a faith in God who holds my hand definitely helped. You know, I would never ever understand the circumstances that led to my brother's death. In how did it happen to a guy who was just the brilliant person he was, doing a good thing, that I will never understand. But what got me through that was to know that, you know, a God who I believe in will take my hand, and one day I'll be with my brother. And that's helped a lot. You know, there've been times where the pain of separation was so hard that I found it hard to breathe, hard to think about even going on 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And those were very, very tough times.
Mm-hmm.
But the love of my friends, and I have some really good friends, and strangers, people who I'd never known, but who actually emerged from nowhere and had a word of encouragement. And also, at the point of this happening, a new pathway opened up to me of people who actually do a lot of work around grief, and people who look beyond the here and now to something else. And that pathway opened for me in a way that wasn't present before. So I became acquainted with the work of David Kessler, Kessler, and he's done an amazing amount of work around grief and trauma. And I got involved in that work. And also, there were other people like Lisa Richards, who was a guest on our show, and she's done quite a bit of work. And then there was Jane Duncan, you know, and she's really understood loss and preparing from planning for loss. So even though these things seem to be quite logical and very tangible, what it helped me to do was to have a more integrated view of life and death. It doesn't take away the pain, but then what I learned, particularly from the work of David Kessler, that it's actually by going through the pain, by actually being with it, by not saying that there's just shortcuts to bypass it, that actually it's the embracing of the pain that leads to a clearer purpose, and it's the embracing of that pain that leads not to happiness necessarily, but a kind of joy for that person's life, that you're able to love through the pain and get the essence of who that person is. So with me now, I'm getting a sense of the love I have for my brother, and I will always have, even though losing him has been extremely painful.
I love those last few words. Even though the pain of losing him has been, I mean, the loss of him has been very painful, but there's
Yeah.
still a joy and a memory, and the joy of the man that was
Yeah.
lives on.
Yeah.
So, with that, I wanted to ask, are there any words of encouragement to other people who've gone through similar experiences? It may not be their brother per se, but a loved one, because one thing we do know is that death is constant. It
Yeah.
happens all around us every day. And it's only when it sometimes personally hits you that it remains with you. We see it, but just because of being human, and we have so much else going on in our lives, we can sympathize for a while and then we move on. But when it hits home, it doesn't go away that easily.
Yeah.
So do you have
Yeah.
mm, any words of encouragement?
Yeah, the first thing I like to say, because you've been through your own journey, and I'm
Mhm.
very aware that in different ways you connect with different elements of my story, and we've both suffered traumatic loss, sudden loss, and you know that is an encouragement to people that sometimes when you are faced with a certain experience, in our case, certain loss, not expected, etc., there's something about being able to align with fellow travelers, people who have walked that journey in some shape or form, and who, in many ways, have a sense of empathy and a sense of compassion for what you're going through. It's not necessarily about saying the right word, because I sense that one probably won't be able to say the right words, but sometimes the presence of somebody or a group of people walking alongside you at a very dark time, even if it's in silence, can be extremely empowering, extremely comforting, extremely soothing. And, with that, not being held by a desire to be perfect or to be kind of pitch right, there might not be that. But sometimes just being there and maybe asking, like some people say, I can't imagine how you feel. The sense of imagination doesn't come into it. You just ask, how are you feeling today? So you don't have to imagine that thing. And the other thing I think is that the grief comes in waves. And sometimes are good days, sometimes are bad days, sometimes it's a series of very bad days. And it's this, for me, everybody's different, everybody grieves differently, but for me it was that sense of when that wave came and it was very, very bad, to just be with that, and somehow that particular bad would pass, and then maybe it will surface. So it's that process, I think, of riding the wave, so to speak, and not beating oneself up when those bad days come. I remember something that David Kessler would say in his videos, when he say, people would say, when will you stop grieving, or when will this stop for you? And he says, will the person still be dead? And he said, yeah, they'll still be dead. Okay. The reality is that I'll never stop that grieving. Grief is there, but what I can do is to live with the legacy of that person. And just as I celebrate my birthday every year, I celebrate that person too. And I just love the way that, his way of looking at grief normalizes living with it, with the loss, but also saying the story of this person after this person has left this life physically is a way that I can honor this person in my life until I go and join that person. So my word of encouragement to anybody listening is that there's not a perfect journey, but there is something about finding your own path with grief travelers, grief supporters that will help you move through it and will help you begin to live with the pain and somehow to find connection with the love.
So aptly said. Especially, again, I'm going to focus on a phrase you just used, grief travelers, because we know that journey, that road is not just well traveled, it's filled with people. And so as you travel down that road with others, there's a connection that comes about. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And for me, I take away from what you said, the just as you celebrate what you said, David Kessler said about celebrating that loved one, just like you celebrate your birthday every year, or most people do. You can celebrate that person too, keeping them alive in your heart and knowing that at one day you will meet with them again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tesse, for sharing. I mean, there's such a difference in you between, was it 2021 when we recorded a similar video where you were really at a different stage of your journey. I know this is something that a lot of people can benefit from because, as you said, that road is well traveled. Not all travelers talk to each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's the power of silence. And a lot of the times the power of presence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's our presence in the situation that we're in. Yeah.
And so, folks, that was our very own Tesse Akpeki, host of Tesse Talks, letting you know where she is now in her grieving journey, in her lost journey, her journey of loss. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we look forward to connecting with you sometime soon with another interesting and just as important topic. Thanks, Tesse.
Thank you, Paula. Lovely.
Bye.